I'm 85. Growing up in the Jim Crow South taught me this. I am 85 years old. My name is Ruby Mae Washington, and I need to tell you something before my time comes. I've lived through things you've only read about in history books. I've seen hatred so thick you could cut it with a knife, and I've seen love so pure it could move mountains. And if you'll sit with me for just a few minutes, I'll tell you what growing up black in the Jim Crow South really taught me about surviving, about fighting back, and about keeping hope alive when the whole world wants you dead. I was born in 1939 in a little town outside Birmingham, Alabama. My mama was a sharecropper's daughter, and my daddy worked in the steel mills when they'd let him. We lived in a shotgun house with newspaper covering the holes in the walls, but my mama kept that place cleaner than any white woman's mansion. She had to, because they were always watching us, waiting for us to give them a reason. The first thing the Jim Crow South taught me was that your dignity ain't something they can take from you. They can make you use the colored water fountain. They can make you sit in the back of the bus. They can make you step off the sidewalk when a white person comes walking, but they can't touch what's inside you unless you let them. I was 6 years old the first time I really understood what we were up against. My mama took me to the five and dime store in town. I saw this beautiful doll with yellow hair and blue eyes sitting on the shelf, and I reached for it. The store owner, Mr. Patterson, slapped my hand so hard it stung for hours. He looked at my mama and said, "Keep your little pickaninny away from the good merchandise." My mama didn't say nothing, just took my hand and walked me out of that store with her head held high. That night she sat me down and explained it to me in a way a 6-year-old could understand. "Ruby Mae," she said, "there are people in this world who think they're better than us because of the color of our skin. They're wrong, but they got the power right now. So we got to be smarter than them. We got to be stronger than them, and we got to outlive them." That became my mama's motto. We got to outlive them. And child, that's exactly what I did. Let me tell you about the schools. They called it separate but equal, but there wasn't nothing equal about it. The white kids got the new books, the nice building, the qualified teachers. We got the hand-me-down books with pages missing, a building that leaked when it rained, and teachers who were doing the best they could with nothing. But you know what? Those teachers, they loved us fiercely. They knew education was our ticket out, and they made sure we got every bit of learning they could give us. I remember my third-grade teacher, Mrs. Johnson. She used to stay after school to teach us extra reading, because she knew we had to be twice as good to get half as much. She'd say, "Your brain is your weapon, Ruby Mae. Fill it up with so much knowledge they can't ignore you." I carried those words with me my whole life. When I was 12, something happened that changed everything. A boy named Emmett Till was killed in Mississippi for allegedly whistling at a white woman. He was just 14 years old, not much older than me. His mama, Mamie Till, she did something brave. She had an open casket funeral and let the world see what they had done to her baby. Those pictures were in every black newspaper, and I stared at them until my mama took the paper away. That's when I learned that this wasn't just about being treated unfairly. This was about life and death. This was about a system that would kill children and call it justice. The fear was real, but so was the anger. And anger, when it's righteous anger, can be fuel for change. The civil rights movement started picking up steam when I was in high school. I remember when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on that bus in Montgomery. We followed that bus boycott for 381 days. 381 days of black people walking miles to work, carpooling, finding any way to get around except riding those buses. And we won. A bunch of maids and janitors and laborers brought the city of Montgomery to its knees by simply refusing to ride the bus. That taught me the power of collective action. One person can plant a seed, but it takes a community to grow a forest. When I was 17, 4 black students integrated Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. I watched those kids walk through crowds of angry white people screaming at them, spitting on them, threatening to kill them, and they kept walking. They were just kids younger than me, and they showed courage I didn't know existed. I decided I wanted to be part of the movement. There was a sit-in planned at the Woolworth's lunch counter in Birmingham. I was supposed to graduate high school in a few months, but I knew this was bigger than school. This was about changing the world. I'll never forget that day, March 15th, 1958. I put on my best dress, the one my mama had sewn for church, and I walked into that Woolworths with 5 other students. We sat down at that lunch counter and ordered coffee. The waitress looked at us like we had lost our minds. "We don't serve coloreds here," she said. "We're not leaving until you do," I replied. Within minutes, there was a crowd of white people gathered around us. They were calling us every name in the book. Someone poured ketchup on my friend Mary's head. Another person stubbed out a cigarette on my arm. I still got the scar. But we sat there. We didn't fight back. We just sat there with dignity. The police came and arrested us. I spent 3 days in jail. My mama was so mad I thought she might never speak to me again. But when I got out, she hugged me tight and whispered, "I'm proud of you, baby girl. You're helping to change this world." That sit-in didn't integrate the lunch counter. It would be 5 more years before that happened. But it planted a seed. And seeds, they grow slowly, but they grow. College was a struggle. We didn't have money, but I was determined to get an education. I worked 3 jobs, cleaning white people's houses during the day, waitressing at a colored restaurant at night, and doing laundry on weekends. I studied by candlelight because we couldn't always afford to keep the electricity on. But I made it through, graduated with a degree in education from Tuskegee Institute in 1961. I was the first person in my family to go to college. My mama cried at that graduation ceremony, like her heart would burst with pride. I came back to Alabama to teach, thinking maybe I could make a difference in the classroom. But the system wasn't ready for change yet. They put me in the worst school in the district, gave me 45 kids in a class and no supplies. But those kids, they were hungry for learning. They reminded me of myself at that age. Then 1963 came, the year everything exploded. Dr. King came to Birmingham with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. They planned demonstrations against segregation, and the white authorities responded with fire hoses and police dogs. I'll never forget watching those images on television, children being knocked down by water pressure so strong it could strip bark off a tree. I knew I had to be part of it. I joined the demonstrations, got arrested 4 more times that year. Each time I thought about what my mama said. We got to outlive them. Every day I stayed committed to the movement was another day closer to outliving this system. The March on Washington was the most beautiful thing I ever saw. 250,000 people, black and white together, demanding justice. When Dr. King gave that speech about his dream, I was standing about 100 yards away. I couldn't hear every word, but I could feel the power of it rolling across that crowd like thunder. That day, I knew we were going to win. Not tomorrow, not next year, but eventually, because there's something unstoppable about people who refuse to accept injustice. After the Civil Rights Act passed in 1964, things started to change slowly, very slowly. The signs came down, but the hatred didn't disappear overnight. It just went underground. Instead of Jim Crow laws, we got redlining. Instead of poll taxes, we got voter ID laws. Instead of separate water fountains, we got separate opportunities. But here's what I learned. Every generation has to fight the fight again. Freedom isn't something you win once and keep forever. It's something you have to protect every single day. I taught school for 37 years, watched thousands of black children grow up and make something of themselves. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, business owners, children whose grandparents couldn't read became professors at universities. That's the power of education. That's the power of refusing to give up. Now I'm 85 years old, and I look around at the world today, and I see young people who think racism is over because we had a black president. Child, let me tell you something. Having a black president was beautiful, and it was progress, but it wasn't the end of the story. It was just another chapter. You young people face different challenges than I did. Your battles aren't as obvious as colored water fountains, but they're just as real. You got to fight for equal justice in the courts. You got to fight for equal opportunities in hiring. You got to fight against systems that are designed to keep you down, even when they don't say it out loud. So let me share with you the 3 most important things growing up in the Jim Crow South taught me. First, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. There were days when the whole world seemed to think I was less than human, but my mama taught me that God made me in His image, and that was good enough for me. Don't let anybody else's ignorance convince you that you're anything less than magnificent. Second, education is your superpower. They can take away your job, your house, your opportunities, but they can't take away what you know. Fill your mind with knowledge, and use that knowledge to open doors that they try to keep closed. Third, change happens when ordinary people do extraordinary things. I wasn't nobody special. I was just a sharecropper's daughter from Alabama. But I showed up, I stood up, I spoke up. And when enough ordinary people do that, the world changes. The movement taught me that hope isn't passive, hope is active. Hope gets up every morning and decides to fight for a better world, even when the odds are stacked against you. Hope sits at lunch counters, hope marches across bridges, hope registers to vote, hope teaches children, hope refuses to be quiet. I'm 85 years old now, and my body is wearing out, but my hope is stronger than ever, because I've seen what's possible when people refuse to accept injustice. I've seen Bull Connor's fire hoses turned into symbols of resistance. I've seen Birmingham's streets of segregation become pathways to equality. Young people, the torch is being passed to you. The struggle continues, but so does the progress. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't change the world. I'm living proof that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Take it from an old lady who outlived Jim Crow. Keep fighting, keep learning, keep hoping. And remember what my mama told me all those years ago. We got to outlive them. And we will. Now I'm tired and it's time for my evening tea. But before I go, I want you to remember this. You are stronger than you know, braver than you feel, and more powerful than they want you to believe. Don't you ever forget that. But before I close this chapter of my story, let me tell you about some people who shaped me along the way. People who showed me what courage really looks like. There was Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer. Lord, that woman had a voice that could shake the heavens. She was a sharecropper from Mississippi who got beaten within an inch of her life for trying to register to vote. But she kept going. She said something I'll never forget. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. That became the battle cry for all of us who were ready to fight back. I met her at a voter registration workshop in 1964. She looked me in the eye and said, "Ruby Mae, you got to understand something. This fight ain't just about us. It's about the children who ain't even born yet. They deserve to live in a world where the color of their skin don't determine the content of their opportunities." That meeting changed my perspective completely. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about thriving. It was about making sure the next generation wouldn't have to go through what we went through. Let me tell you about another lesson the South taught me, the power of music in the movement. We didn't just march, we sang. We didn't just protest, we harmonized. We Shall Overcome, Keep Your Eyes on the Prize, Amazing Grace. Those songs weren't just melodies. They were prayers set to music. They were hope given voice. I remember one night in 1965, we were in a jail cell in Selma after being arrested for attempting to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge. There were about 15 of us women crammed into a cell meant for 6. We were scared, tired, and hungry. Someone started humming Precious Lord, and before long we were all singing. The guards tried to make us stop, but we just sang louder. That's when I learned that they could lock up our bodies, but they couldn't silence our spirits. Music became our weapon of mass instruction. It taught us that we were connected to something bigger than ourselves. The years after the Civil Rights Act passed were complicated. People think 1964 was the end of the story, but it was really just the beginning of a new chapter. Integration meant we could sit anywhere on the bus, but it also meant we lost some of our community institutions. Black schools closed. Black businesses struggled as their customers scattered to integrated establishments. I watched my beloved Tuskegee Institute go through changes that broke my heart. They started admitting white students, which was progress, but they also started losing some of their black identity. The balance between progress and preservation became a constant struggle. In the 1970s, I became the principal of a newly integrated elementary school. Half the student body was black, half was white. The white parents were nervous about their children being educated by a black principal. The black parents were nervous about their children being in a school with white children who had been raised to think they were superior. I had to learn how to navigate those waters carefully. I instituted what I called Heritage Fridays, where students would share stories about their family history and cultural traditions. I wanted every child to understand that their background was valuable, whether they came from sharecroppers or shop owners. One Friday, A little white boy named Tommy shared a story about his great-grandfather who fought in the Civil War. He said his family had always been told that his ancestor was a hero who fought for states' rights. A little black girl named Sarah raised her hand and said, "My great-great-grandmother was a slave. States' rights meant she couldn't have rights." The classroom got real quiet. Tommy started crying because he didn't understand why his hero might have been fighting to keep Sarah's ancestor enslaved. That's when I knew I had to teach these children the truth about our shared history, even when it was uncomfortable. I spent the rest of that year teaching both groups of children about the complexity of our past. The white children learnt about the horrors of slavery and the courage of the people who resisted it. The black children learnt about white allies who risked everything to help enslaved people escape. All of them learned that history isn't simple and healing isn't easy, but understanding is essential. By the time I retired in 1998, that school had become a model for successful integration, not because we ignored our differences, but because we celebrated them while finding our common humanity. Marriage and family were another challenge during those times. I met my husband James at a NAACP meeting in 1966. He was a veteran who had served in Korea, came back to Alabama, and couldn't even get a job as a mechanic because most white shop owners wouldn't hire black men, and the black shops couldn't afford to pay a living wage. We married in 1968, the same year Dr. King was assassinated. Our wedding was beautiful, but it was also somber. The movement had lost its most visible leader, and we didn't know what would happen next. James and I promised each other that we would continue the work, even if we had to do it quietly. We tried for years to have children, but it wasn't meant to be. Instead, we became foster parents to 17 different children over the course of 20 years. Some stayed with us for a few months, others for several years. Each one taught us something about resilience. I remember a little girl named Keisha who came to us when she was 7. Her mother was addicted to drugs, and her father was in prison. She was angry at the world, and she had every right to be. She would act out in school, get into fights, refuse to do her homework. One day, I found her crying in her room. I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "Mrs. Ruby, why did God make me black? Everything bad happens to black people." That question broke my heart and motivated me at the same time. I sat down with that child and told her the same thing my mama had told me. "Baby, God made you black because He knew you were strong enough to handle the beauty and the burden of it. Being black means you come from people who survived things that should have destroyed them. That's not a curse, that's a superpower." I started taking Keisha to the library every week and showing her books about black inventors, scientists, artists, and leaders. I wanted her to see that black people weren't just survivors, we were creators, innovators, and world changers. Keisha is 45 years old now. She's a pediatric surgeon, married with 3 children of her own. She calls me every Mother's Day and says thank you for teaching me that being black was something to be proud of, not something to apologize for. That's what the Jim Crow South really taught me, that love is the strongest force in the universe. Not the sentimental kind of love that ignores problems, but the fierce kind of love that fights to make things better. The kind of love that looks at a broken system and says, "This ends with me." As I look at the world today, I see young black people facing challenges I never imagined. Social media has given them a platform to speak truth to power, but it's also exposed them to hatred on a scale I never experienced. They can achieve things my generation could only dream of, but they're still fighting for basic respect and equal justice. To the young people reading this, let me leave you with the most important lesson of all. Your ancestors' struggles were not in vain if you continue to struggle for justice. Every protest you attend, every vote you cast, every time you stand up for what's right, you're honoring the blood, sweat, and tears of everyone who came before you. Don't let anyone tell you that racism is over just because the laws have changed. Laws change hearts, don't always follow, but keep pushing, keep believing, keep fighting. Because freedom isn't free, and justice isn't automatic. And remember this, you are the dream that your ancestors dreamed when they were lying in slave quarters, wondering if their children would ever be free. You are the hope that sustained your grandparents when they were drinking from colored water fountains and believing in a better tomorrow. You are the answer to prayers that were whispered in cotton fields and shouted from church pulpits and sung in jail cells. So live like it, dream like it, fight like it, love like it. You carry the blood of survivors, the DNA of overcomers, the spirit of world changers. That's your inheritance from the Jim Crow South. That's your gift from me to you. Now go change the world, baby. It's your turn now.